Welcome to the Atlanteans, a podcast about Warmachine and the Iron Kingdoms, created by the Hampton Roads Atlantean gaming community. And now to our hosts. Hey guys, this is Jay.
And this is Alec.
Hey Alec. We're here with episode 2. What did you think of the reaction to episode 1?
I thought we had a great community experience. People reached out to me both in the comments on the YouTube channel, on Facebook, and then I even saw people comment on the Facebook posts, and it was really nice to see the community interaction.
Yeah, I got a lot of great feedback from friends and from people posting on the different places that we posted about the YouTube video, and thank you very much for the warm welcome to our episode 1, I hope you guys enjoy episode 2. So first thing off we wanted to do is we want to introduce a guest on the show. This is Joe. Hey Joe, say hi.
Hey, this is Joe. I also enjoyed episode 1. Thought it was a lot of fun, so I'm excited to be here.
Joe is one of our regulars in our community, and he's been playing a lot of games with us and hanging out for the... When did you join the group? About a year ago? No?
Yeah, I moved here about a year ago now. I had taken a little bit of a break from Warmachine, but I'd seen that you guys were active, and I was really excited to get back into things. And you and Alec taught me Mark IV, so that's been really fun. And
by taught you mean you beat up on me as I taught you Mark IV.
Yeah. I was a little bit merciless, but you were very good at teaching me all the nuances.
So
I'm certainly grateful for that.
So Joe's a Scorn player, has regularly beat up on me in most of the games we played back and forth.
Yeah, I've been playing Scorn since Mark II. Mostly an old Mark II player. Played a little bit of Crix, and that's about it. But it's been really fun to get back into the game. Warmachine is such a good game and such a fresh game, and it's been awesome to re-experience that.
Agree. How do you feel about the changes? Just as a quick sort of side of some of the stuff we talked about in episode 1, how do you feel about the changes from Mark II, Mark III to Mark IV?
I mean, I think they're good. I try to take an approach of I'm not a game designer. I'm just a guy who plays the game. So if I like the game, that's good enough for me.
Gotcha.
I think things are different, but I'm definitely used to the way units move now. I think that works really smoothly. There's less nuance, but it's smooth and probably more friendly for new players. And so I think that's really good. I think it's still Warmachine at the core though. It's still the same game that I recognized. Yeah. One thing that is kind of different this year is the new Steamroller. Ugh. And it's funny, Steamroller it was the same when I stopped playing. Yep. We launched into Steamroller and it was basically the same as when I'd left.
And the Steamroller basically didn't change for almost 6 years.
Yeah, I mean, it must not have.
I mean, there were little missions got tweaked here and there, but all the missions stayed the same since 2001, 2019.
Yeah, so I think the last update was 2019, and then 2020 we were supposed to get an update, and COVID delayed that, and then they kept, other than minor adjustments, they kept it the same.
Yep, it was pretty rough.
So, at the risk of being overly positive, I really like the new Steamroller. I think it's imperfect, but a lot of good changes, and I'm sure they'll refine it, and it'll be really nice in time. And one thing that I really like about Mark IV is the list building is really good, at least as a Scorn player. It's not as restrictive as themes. It's not as open as no restrictions. I think they found a really happy medium.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that coming from... So in Mark IV, I've been more of a new army player and less of I have played some Grimkin, I've played some legacy armies here and there, but for the most part, I've played mostly new Mark IV army, and so the two of you guys being legacy players, you see that flexibility a lot more than I have. I actually feel kind of restricted with the limited amount of models that I have and the little amount of options that I have.
That's interesting, yeah, because we have much more... I guess my Scorn range is still really quite broad compared to the older armies.
Yeah. You have a lot more flexibility in list of different things you can do with the list.
Yeah, it's just the right amount. It's I can tweak things, I have options, but I don't have everything, right? I don't have unlimited synergies. I really like where it ended up.
Yeah, it feels to me like I'm using a lot of the same models across my armies, and that I guess that's probably true for some of your models, some of the things, but just in the couple of lists I've seen you play lately in Exalted, you've had some lists that are very infantry heavy, very on almost no beasts or heavy stuff, and then you've had some really hard, heavy-hitting stuff like the game I watched you and JD play on War Table the other night, where you had the big nasty mammoth and a bunch of beasts, and then a couple of support things sort of around the outside edges.
Yeah, and like part of that's by design. I like to play different things and like try out the whole faction, but I think it's totally possible with Scorn. Like if you look at those lists and then the like Western Reaches lists I have, I can build 5 or 6 very different feeling and looking lists, and that's great.
Yeah, that's really, really a cool function of a lot of the legacy lists that I think not as much of the new Mark IV lists have.
Yeah, now that you mention it, like I think you're right. When I see those like new Mark IV lists, they do tend to be much more samey, much more like a lot of the same units, rotate out the Warcaster, a couple of choices, that kind of thing.
Pretty much.
I would offer
me to say if that's like a necessary thing or if that's a choice. Yeah.
I was going to say I'd offer a little bit of feedback on that. I feel like as a Menoth player, I'm still seeing the same pieces, and I've done a wide variety. But if we want to try to be anything close to just not get stomped, I don't even say competitive, but not get stomped, we really have to kind of go with the same olds. I've actually been talking on the Facebook page about maybe just a little bit of love towards Menoth. But no, I definitely like Joe's list. And I have been trying a wide variety of lists, but I feel like if we want to try to work with it, it's the same 15 models.
Do you think that it's just the nature of the lists that you're playing, and that you have less total options in the kind of than the Scorn lists might have?
I think so. I think it also might be the pieces that they transitioned from Mark III to Mark IV. I think I don't know how much player testing they did actually with Menoth, and I think because of that, some of the stuff that might have been able to give us a wider variety, they didn't give us. They gave us a huge amount of melee-centric jacks.
Right.
And that was it. Whereas if we had things like the Reckoner come through into Exemplar Interdiction, it might have given us some more options for how to play. And we have to, either, run some Judicators so that we can get the most out of them, or if we need to the other ways, it's kind of going infantry. Whereas I've shown you guys and I've played, blended lists, and those just get shot off the table.
Yeah, I think that's one of the pieces I really miss from the Final Interdiction compared to Temple. When I messed around with it a little bit, is that I always like to play the Reckoner and that chassis of Jack with the Exemplar, because they missed that ranged element that a lot of the basically the stuff that got left out, the Faithful Masses kind of units, the Deliverers and that kind of stuff, which I would normally take as support for those kind of armies. They were missing that piece, and it's kind of weird that the way they chose to sort of split the jacks. I think the jack pool should just be the same for both armies, and then you can have the infantry and stuff be different. And by splitting them the way I do, not as well. I didn't play Menoth in Mark II. I was playing Khador, Circle, and Ret in Mark II primarily.
I feel like they're trying to encourage us to play almost like the themes of Mark II, where like this is your melee theme,
right?
This is your range, and we don't have, even between Temple and Exemplar Interdiction, we don't really have any sort of really good way to give us range.
Yeah, a lot of your range support that exists in the game from as far back as Mark I and Prime and Escalation and Apotheosis didn't transfer into the new lists, and I thought that was really weird.
Yeah, I'm very sad about that. But that's just a thing we can talk about for later if you want. But I was going to say that I feel like the tool chest coming from Mark III to Mark IV, it got cut significantly. So we're basically doing the same old. We just have different sizes of hammers instead of a hammer, a screwdriver, and a wrench.
Right. So you just think that compared to Scorn, maybe the Legacy Menoth army just didn't get as good of a transfer of models, or wasn't as complete a transfer of models with the limiting to Exemplar and limiting to Temple as Scorn had?
I wouldn't say it isn't as good. I think whoever helped do the transition had a better grasp of Scorn than they did on Menoth. And that's not an insult to them. I mean, I don't know how much time they put into it, but just as someone who dedicates a lot of time into Menoth, I feel like if they would have tried those out or tried out different options, they could have brought in a wider variety. Like, I would like to see Sunburst. I would like to have seen Deliverers. I would have liked to see, heck, even some Zealots out there so we could just have different options. Even a range 6 grenade is still a range 6 grenade.
I mean, those pieces were missing from Exemplar and Mark III as well.
They were, but I meant like as Menoth on a whole. So Temple Flame Guard we have what? Temple Flame Guard, you have
right.
Daughters, you have Daughters on Horseback, which are, of course, the Flame Bringers.
Right.
And then you have a few things.
The Pike and the Flamethrower unit. Yeah.
Yeah, and let's be honest, the Cleansers got no love whatsoever. They've needed love since Mark II. And they got a little bit, and then that obviously got nerfed back again between Mark III with Faye and then Mark IV. And I wish there was some way I could just give, like, major feedback to SFG, but I don't know if they're going to really look for that, or if they want it, because hopefully Zoo Menoth is coming out. But no, I do, like, I have spent a lot of time with all of the armies looking at them, and I think Scorn is in a really good place, and I think they got a really good tool chest on that they can play different strategies, and part of me is kind of envious of how Joe can do that.
I think it might have been the makeup of the army, and because they basically picked 2 of the Mark III themes and updated them and added a little bit here and there, split the jacks between the 2 pools, and that's sort of how the Mark III themes came about for Menoth. And I think just the nature of what was in Scorn compared to what was in Menoth is allow the army to play a little bit better.
I mean, that's definitely a possibility.
So for our YouTube,
I am still positive.
Yeah. So
I have 2 notes.
Yeah. Go ahead.
One, I absolutely hate Zealots. I'm glad they were never returning. If I understood that right. 2, a lot of bad memories there, or good memories, but and then I don't know. I hope they focus on like new stuff and Mark IV stuff rather than trying to fix all the old stuff. But that's just me. Yeah,
it seems from the couple of AMA discussions that they're sort of split on what they're going to do with Legacy. Half of the people ask about Legacy and like, are they gonna, now that they're adding even more models to the Mark IV factions with the new command groups and things, are they gonna add more casters or add more Legacy models into the different lists? And half the time they're sort of like, yeah, that's what we plan to do. It's a back burner thing, and but once we have things flowing and we start getting on the release list, we'll go back and look at some of that old stuff and see if we can add more of it into the prime armies. But then at the same time, half the other time, it's sort of like the rules are there. They're going to continue to have the rules be available and you'll still be able to use them in prime, but they're not going to focus as much on the Legacy group of models. They're not sure how much they're going to add, especially as they get more and more of the new factions and new armies out for the Mark IV armies. So like once we get through Crix, that'll be the 7th army. Then we're going to get another Signar, another Khador, and I bet you after that we start seeing more new factions. So like we'll probably see Zoo Menoth, we'll probably see playable Mark III and previous armies have a new option in Mark IV. So could be new Dwarves, could be Zoo Menoth, could be Scorn, could be a lot of things. What do you guys think?
I don't know. I think it's a hard thing to predict. I think we'll just see. I think that seems possible.
So I think if SFG had the option to sell older models, I think we would definitely see that. I think unless SFG somehow has some of the older stuff, I don't think we're going to see a huge amount of love towards the older models. I mean, I understand SFG just spent a lot of money and they want to get their money's worth.
Well, that was one of the things that came up in the early AMAs, one of the first AMAs, is that people are asking that, now that you seem to be sort of like wanting to get as much stuff out and get people playing, are you going to re-release some of the newer legacy models that came out during Mark III or whatever? And they said that's definitely something you're going to look at doing. If anything that they have digital sculpts of and not like a physical sculpt that they can produce quickly in plastic or make into a 3-minable model, they were interested in possibly re-releasing some of that stuff. But, who knows? Who knows if that's going to actually come about or if they're just going to try and push out Mark IV versions of all those armies.
Well, I think if they were to allow some of the stuff, not just Carver and Magnus, I think if they were allowed some of those mercenaries to come into the older armies, I think that would actually help us. Or not necessarily men off, but I think it would help some of the older armies to get just some of that newer things. Or just like in the other podcast, how we talked about possibly looking at some of the older casters and opening up a spell rack for them. I think that could do a lot of, fresh love and support into those older things. Like, Joe, if you were to have one of your casters that's in Mark IV that would have the option to a spell rack, just, maybe his spells or her spells, and then maybe 3 or 4 new ones. Do you think that would encourage more people to possibly look back at their Scorn that's either sitting on their shelf or try to pick up maybe some Scorn in the secondary market?
I mean, maybe. But Scorn's really good.
So you wouldn't want them better?
No, I mean, I think people would like that kind of refresh on the old casters. I'm sure that would be of interest.
The hard thing to do with that, though, is that unless they make those Scorn the ability for new players or returning players to buy back into those old Scorn armies, spending that development time in making an older model, a legacy model, have access to the newer abilities wouldn't be that detrimental. They wouldn't see much profit or sales from that because it's hard to get those models. And by upping that kind of value on those kind of models, the few people that have them will keep them, and the people that have been selling them might keep them. And then the new people that don't have access to them won't ever be able to play with them.
Yeah. So I have a counterpoint for that. I already thought about it. Mm-hmm. Mini crate. So Krios 2 was a mini crate model.
Right.
And he is 3D printed. In fact, I have one behind me.
Mm-hmm. I have one on my desk.
If they did that for Scorn, I don't know if Scorn has got any mini crates since they went to the Mark IV. But if they did, they have those options. They could be like, oh, hey, and that's going to encourage people to maybe pick up a one-use mini crate, or maybe they get into it and they do it monthly. So that's why it's an idea that, oh, hey, this caster is going to be coming back. There's a mini crate of it. This caster is coming back. And these casters also have spell rack. I can tell you that's going to get people into doing mini crate, which is a great way to bring money in.
The issue with that, though, is they have to have an existing army to play with. So yeah, you can sell a mini crate of an old model, and that's cool. And I think that's a great way to do it, to refresh the models. There's definitely some models that could use a refresh with mini crate, but the problem is for legacy armies, you already have to own that army to be able to play that army. You can't if you don't have that army already, you can't go ahead and go out and play that army because the models just aren't available.
I'm thinking a little bit more in regards to bringing some people who are kind of disenfranchised with going from Mark III to Mark IV, or especially between privateer selling to SFG. Mm-hmm. Put that out in a big press release. Hey, we are looking at bringing, some updates to some of these older models. So if you have something, why don't you come pick up this piece and come play with us? And I think that might be an option. I mean, yeah, people might use their old whatever. Let's say it was Krios. Maybe people would use their old Krios. Maybe people wouldn't. But I think that would get more people out playing. And even if they're playing older stuff, if you get people bringing older stuff out, but eventually they're going to look at those new armies and want to get in them.
But they'd have to have an existing collection of old models. I understand. I was talking about the people that don't have those armies anymore. If you put the development into those old models, only the people that have those existing models will be able to play with them. None of the new people that don't have them, the people that sold their armies, will be able to.
Yeah, but I'm talking about maybe 13 to 15 pieces total, like just casters. Just do it purely with a caster. And that will bring people who have stepped out of this thing and bring them back in. Think about how many people we have locally that haven't come back or maybe play in a different direction, and giving them the chance of like, oh, hey, this caster might help your Mark IV army. We gave him a little bit of update. He or she has a spell rack. We also have this new mini crate of them. Why don't you come out and try Mark IV with us? Not only does it sell a mini, but it also brings back some of those older players and the current people. It's going to give them like a little bit more of a warm and fuzzy versus how many people, like you, as you said,
but they have to have an army.
No, but most of those people still have an army. It's sitting on their shelf or it's sitting in a box. It's not necessarily about just getting them to get a whole new army. It's about being people, maybe there's other Scorn players. I mean, Joe's out here, but maybe he knows some other Scorn players. Or you put those out.
But are they selling to the people that have armies that are sitting on the sidelines and trying to get them back in playing with their already existing collections, or are they selling to people that they want to buy new armies?
So it's more on they are trying to bring people out. So do you know why most free MMOs are able to survive? Yes, it's through microtransactions, but it's because people will, if they don't have a huge dollar value to get into it, a huge investment to get in, let's say they already have it, or like that'd be in the case of Warmachine, they already have it. Giving them just a small thing to get them back in gets more people to play. And what we need right now, we need both new players. Definitely we need new players. We need to sell new armies, but they also need to get more people. And if you can go from your local game store going 4 to 6 people to 8 to 10 to 12 to 14, because the old guys are going to come out and they're like, oh, hey man, there's this new spell rack system. Let me see how that does. And now what they can do is they're bringing back older people. And that's a way that if there's more people at a table or more people at a convention, it's more eyes and it's more potential for future sales.
See, I think that the majority of people that had existing collections, and I could be wrong, Joe, you might be able to speak to this as one of these kind of people. The people that had an existing collection, when Mark IV came about and groups were starting to play, those people are already back if they were going to be back. You think that's true, Joe?
I don't know. I have no idea. I've kind of lost the thread. I feel bad. I feel like I've derailed.
So basically what we're talking about. Basically what we're talking about. No, I mean, this is, so we create the show notes as a guide of what we want to talk about during the episode, and then Alec and I just sort of go wherever. And that's just how the first episode flowed, and I think that's how things are going to go. I think we're sort of getting into that topic that I wanted to talk about on competitive versus non-competitive, and getting people sort of into the game, and basically what Alec's saying is that if they were to add spell racks to a bunch of the casters, the old legacy casters, and maybe release new mini crate or new alternate version models of those casters, people that aren't playing the game now that have existing collections might be more interested in getting back in the game to sort of try those new elements. Maybe if they make the Mark IV more of the Mark IV mercenaries, like the airship and some of the solos and things available in the older armies. Let the Grimkin solo play with the Grimkin army. Things like that. People might be more interested. My point of view is that we've been playing in Mark IV for 1.5 to 2 years already. And all those, I think most of those people who had armies that were sitting on them when Mark IV released have already come back if they're interested in coming back. And you, as someone who had a Scorn army from Mark II and Mark III, when Mark IV happened and you found our group playing, you got back into it and you tried Mark IV and you've been playing. What do you think? Do you think that doing more like adding new versions of existing characters could get more of those people back, or do you think most of those people have already come back?
I mean, I don't know. Yeah, I'm like an evidence guy, right?
Right.
I'm also a guy who doesn't. I don't like to speculate too much. I'm kind of a bad podcast guest. Guest, I guess. But I mean, my view is, I feel like I'm glad the legacy armies are playable. I'm glad they have rules.
Right.
I feel like the future of the game is in new Mark IV things and getting people excited about the new stuff. And so if I were in charge of SFG, that's where I would put things. Is that the right strategy? I don't know. I'm sure what Alex says is right. I'm sure doing some of that would bring more players back. So, but that's just kind of how I feel about it.
So, segueing from that, recently, in news-wise, we had a couple of things come out from SFG, from Steamforged Games, and one of them, they did an AMA on Tuesday, the 18th of June. And one of the big pieces of information that came out of that is they're working on a new Journeyman format. Do you have good experience with the Journeyman format in the past, Joe?
Yeah, I've played the old one. I know people love Journeyman leagues, and I've just played a ton of them. So
there was a time that our community ran 3 a year because that's what Atlantis wanted.
Oh, I believe it, and I mean they do get people out of the woodworks, right? Like, everybody like signs up and they start a little force and they play. So I mean, I can see why there's a lot of interest in them. For me, I want to get past those really small games.
Right.
I like 15 points or whatever. I guess it's 30 points now. I'm not sure the smallest size is.
So
is 30 and then 50.
Yeah.
30, 50,
50
75.
I think it's a little bit interesting. I like 75 a lot. I think they do need their own scenarios though, because I think Steamroller 2024 is really hard to play at less than 100.
I would agree with you.
Also agree.
Yeah. So the little bit that we've heard from the couple of different posts about sort of what the new Journeyman is going to look like is that it's 30-point games to start with. I don't know how the expanding works, but people are going to be playing with the new command groups, the new command starters. So I'm guessing that at some point SFG will release official, I'm using air quotes here, official sort of starter armies that fit into the previewed sort of command group, and eventually at least the new armies are all supposed to get their own of these armies. And it's basically a caster, a jack, usually a character jack, character solo, and a unit. And the new 2-player starter boxes coming out in October for Khador and Signar are going to have a force of each kind in it. And Crix, when they start releasing in August, one of the first things releasing is a command starter box, and that's sort of set up where it's a 30-point army with a caster, a jack, or beast, a unit, and a solo in it. And sort of one of the things that Matt Hart, who's one of the founders and the guy that's sort of focusing on the playtesting and design team of the SFG founders, that is sort of, he was saying that he's been playing a lot of games on 3x3 tables that are first player deploys 5 inches in, second player deploys 10 inches in, and playing, small 30-point games in that sort of size, which seems like that's probably the way direction the new Steamroller is going. What do you guys think about that?
I feel like they need to adjust those deployment zones. I feel like that's going to run into a little bit of what we were having in early Mark IV with the scenarios. I feel like if someone is going to be 5 inches and 10 inches in, that's like too much. I feel like maybe 5 and 7. I know it's a minor critique. I'm okay with playing on a 30-inch by 30-inch or like a 3-foot by 3-foot. I mean, I'd probably rather go 30-inch by 30-inch because I own those mats.
I do too, but he was talking about a 3x3.
I like the idea of possibly doing it. I also agree with Joe significantly that those would have to have different scenarios. They could definitely pull some type of scenarios if they wanted to do those from like a narrative aspect or something like that. I think that was a great thing when they did with Oblivion for Oblivion Part 1 and Oblivion Part 2. And I think if they were to do those into a Journeyman League, I think that's a great idea. I used to run two Journeyman a year when I was up in Fayetteville. And then but when we went over to Germany, I was doing 2 Journeyman and 2 Oblivion when we were doing it over there because people were liking the Oblivion so much. And the Oblivion leagues were actually probably bringing in more people than my actual Journeyman leagues.
Oh. Yeah, Oblivion wasn't as popular here. We did get all the way through one of the Oblivion 1 league, but when Oblivion 2 came out, I think me and JD were the only 2 people that really played with it. And we started a league and maybe 4 people started playing, and 2 of them dropped out after like week 2 or 3. And it was me and JD are the only ones that played through most of it. And I don't think we got to the final game.
I mean, I guess it depends on your play group. Like my players love that. And that was probably more of the casual players love that than the actual competitive. The competitive guys, all they wanted to do was play Steamroller, but the casual guys would come out in droves because they knew the competitive guys weren't necessarily going to be there, and they were really enjoying it.
Huh. Yeah, no, I know it's a shock with the way our community is now, but this community until the last year or 2 was a very narrative-based community, and we didn't do a lot of. I just couldn't run tournament. We tried to run tournaments several times and couldn't because no one was interested in doing that.
I mean, we definitely have some guys who are definitely more on the tournament side of it now. Yeah. Hey, don't remember, I still love casual plays, like narrative, but I feel like casual narrative, I think, is better than just straight casual. I liked, especially for a league, I like to know that there's something happening. It's just like when we did a hex board back when I was up in Fayetteville, and I know you've done a hex board campaign as well. It is so much fun to see yourself moving across the board.
Mm-hmm.
But I also know that there are some players that when they watch as their territory shrinks and they lose more and more, they'll become disheartened. And it's a hard aspect to go for some players. Like, I can go and I can lose 10 games in a row and I'll be fine. But sometimes you won't necessarily get that. And I'm not even saying that that's a casual or competitive. I think that's a blend. Some people just don't want to lose because they don't see themselves learning anything from it. So what do you think about when you lose or when you're playing casual or competitive?
I don't think casual players mind losing that much. I think they mind losing a lot.
Yes.
I think that's really the issue. And so you want to set up, and especially like when, if you play a lot, the game sometimes gets boiled down to win or lose, and that's sort of what you get out of it. And you're not like, there's a competitive mindset that's about practicing and stuff, but not everybody wants to bring that to the table, right? And that's like not where everybody's at. I mean, I don't really know what we would be practicing for, right?
Yeah. So Joe, with you and I, we're both like fairly competitive, but I feel like you and I really enjoy our games, not because it's win or loss. It's because the crazy stuff that happens or the tactics of like, oh, hey, I thought this was going to work, but that didn't work. So we had to shift and, change fire. Like, with our Resnick game, my Resnick versus your Xerxes, that game, that went back and forth a couple times, but I enjoyed that game. I would have enjoyed losing that game just because the way we played, it wasn't, I won. Oh, it doesn't matter. Or I lost, whatever. I think it's the enjoyment in playing itself. Or would you agree? Would you disagree? What do you think?
But I think we both go into the expectation of like having a reasonable chance of winning, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, and I think that's like, and that's all anybody wants, right? Is like a reasonable chance of, knowing they're gonna have a good time, knowing that they're gonna like, the outcome isn't foregone, right? Like that's why the map campaign thing starts to get tough too when you lose all your territory, right? You're like, oh man, there's just nothing I can do now. So it's hard to keep that kind of balance, right? Between people.
Yeah, so when I run map campaigns, one of the reasons I run them the way I do is because of that sort of negative feeling. So what I do is that once a person has lost all their territory and they lose their capital to an opponent and are not effectively knocked out, they actually aren't knocked out. They're just a new member of that person's team, and now they're playing with that person and they both are trying to score more, take more hexes on the field. So no one's ever out.
That's sweet, right?
They just become a new.
That's a good idea.
Become part
they get
of
a new objective, right?
Right.
In some sense, they become more powerful, right?
Right.
They're aligned with the person that killed them. I like that.
They get more. They get the experience, and they can also ask for help if they need help from the person that defeated them. And so there's a way for that person to get help. They obviously need help from losing a bunch of games in a row and are struggling with what to do with their list, and they can now ask that teammate, "Hey, what do you think I should do here? I'm going to play into this guy, and he takes this kind of army. So like maybe what should I do with my army to help him?" So
I've also seen in that aspect where if someone gets their capital lost or they've been knocked out to a certain extent and they want to pull back, that they are now, it'd be the equivalent of like an NPC. So, but if you want to do specific scenario specific, like they had in one of the times, it was you had these 5 scenarios and you could only play them either against the person who was running the campaign who wasn't actually in it, or against someone who had been knocked out. And that later weeks in the campaign, more people wanted to play against those knocked out people because it had the chance of getting them a bonus that they could take into a next game. So those people who had gotten knocked out found that they were the ones being sought after to get played in and to play against. And that was a really cool thing because those people were getting actually more games than the regular people.
That's an interesting idea. Yeah, I always did the sort of bonus abilities based upon location. So like if you take X location, you get this bonus ability you can use once per week in one of your games.
Well, we had that as well, but it was we had the 6 camp. It was I can't remember who came up with it. But it was one of the local players suggested, well, why don't we do that? Like, because we had I think it was from a previous narrative that's where we took the scenarios, and that really helped so that people wanted to play against the other people. And they were each of those scenarios the person who was like the equivalent of the NPC actually got more points. So you knew you were going into a harder fight to challenge this person. Like, let's say, for example, you were doing the equivalent of a modern 50 point. Well, the NPC guy got 65. So you had to know going in, okay, I'm going to have this uphill battle. I need to do these objectives and I need to beat him. And the other player who was maybe not as good or, has had some bad luck or maybe things like that had advantages coming in, because you give someone an extra 15 points and that can make a difference. That's, 2 warjacks or that's 2 units, and that can make a difference on the battlefield.
Okay. That's an interesting, that's definitely an interesting take on the campaign setup. I don't think I've ever run anything quite like that.
It put stress on the person running it because they had to, like, I had a binder and I was just like, oh, well, this person, and then you also had to have the scenarios for those special ones. And it was more fun for the people who were kind of like coming into it because they knew they weren't just going to get blown out of the water.
So have either of you two had any experience with the narrative scenarios that have been released, or the campaigns that have been released during Mark IV?
No, I was reading those, and I really wanted to try them. I think they'd be fun to try out. I feel like I'm in kind of a steamroller mode until Nova, and after Nova, it's like pretty high on my list of things to do.
Yeah, me and JD.
I played against the ones last year. Okay.
Yeah. Me and JD tried a bunch of the Battle Forge missions back in 2023, and some of them are pretty fun. Some of them are pretty imbalanced and kind of broken.
That was my experience as well. I tried them; they were okay. I think I probably did more of them on War Table than I did in person, because in my in-person games, I definitely wanted to try more of some of that steamroller. And times I was doing some of those narratives, it was a little bit easier to just set up with some of the guys from my older gamer groups that were more casuals. But I definitely agree that some of them were significantly unbalanced, and I felt like there wasn't really like a goal.
It wasn't.
I definitely
what
agree.
I want, right?
Sort of the point of some of them, right? Is that they're asymmetrical.
Yes, definitely. But I felt like it didn't feel like there was much of a purpose. Like, it felt with Oblivion, I felt a stronger goal, because when we were going through Oblivion and I was even submitting our results, I thought that was going to affect the world. I thought it was going to be like old school stuff. Or if you've played the old,
they were more. Oblivion was more reenacting events that had happened during the battles that had happened during the narrative, and I don't think it really affected the results of who was going to win or how things were going to happen. At least my opinion. I think that's more of what Oblivion was.
Gotcha. I thought it was going to be a little different. I mean, I guess part of me always wants another Black Crusade, which obviously isn't Warmachine.
Well, right,
but
right.
That's
I
feel like
me
that
as well.
I
think a narrative game that had results based upon, like, how they used to run old leagues, where like the results of the Holden, for example, is a great example of, they ran a year-long series of leagues, and the results from those leagues influenced the next version of Holden that would be in the next month's set of leagues, and then those results would influence things, and then there'd be 2 versions of the card, one leaning one way, one leaning the other, and then there would be a final mega battle at the end at a con or a convention that would have the result of what they were like.
Okay, I don't remember the story of Holden entirely, but I think I'm pretty sure that like the ending of that was like kind of bitter, right?
Oh yes, extremely bitter.
Big mega battle at like Lock and Load or whatever, and and somebody like threw the game so that Holden got sent to Grimkin or something.
That's why they did it. Yeah, that's why people did it. I mean, that's one of the things I really like.
It's such a good story.
He went through all the narrative, and he was like this badass Grimkin hunter. He was going to be this new solo that was going to totally sort of counter a lot of the things the Grimkins did, and he was totally set up to be this really great support piece that a lot of models wanted. Sort of a solo hunter that was also a good support against like fear-causing units and things like that at the time. And Hungerford like bribed a guy to let him grab him and escape with him so that Grim could have him. just on a whim at one of the at Lock and Load that at the end of the year or Warfare Weekend or something like that. Yeah. And don't get me wrong, I love my Grimkin Holden.
Yeah, I thought that kind of stuff was awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's transition a little bit here and talk about what we have going on in the club and what we've been working on lately. What kind of projects are you guys working on? For those of you watching on YouTube, Alec has been painting away. Alec, what are you painting?
I am currently painting my shrine for Menoth. I'll do a little bit, put it back together.
Remember that it's top down, so you're going to have to position it so they can see it.
So this is the regular shrine.
Yep.
And then I actually commissioned Jay to help me design a bigger shrine to go underneath it. And by the way, look, it's good to go, so you can bring it to a tournament and play with it. And I've been painting it, and then on here is going to also go, well, I have two separate shrines that are currently getting done. One is a destroyed shrine that is going to have Krios 2 fighting Fiora. And then on my other one, I have Hierarch Boyle, which is that special piece that Privateer sent me a few years ago. And he is going to be fighting Striker with Harbinger up above.
Yeah. Funny story, the discussion about Boyle and his card and actually you getting it came up on the SFG Discord a couple days ago. And they showed pictures of you receiving it and as you were leaving Germany and pictures of the model. So yeah, so that's actually in the knowledge of the community right now.
That's sick.
I mean, I remember when they gave it to me because they contacted Privateer and they're like, hey, he started and ran this community. Where at our peak, we had 32 people showing up to my house in Germany, and we would have 8 to 10 game tables going every 2 weeks. But we had people coming almost every week sometimes to just come hang out and play because I had the full giant garage. And I did that, and then I started taking people on tournaments where we would all, load up into 2 vans and drive. Well, 1 van most of the time, but we had other people. But having people just come down and around, and that was a lot of fun. And it was one of those things. So one of my local players went and he contacted Privateer, who already knew of me from other things, and was like, what can we do for Alec? And so they thought about it for, I guess, about 2 weeks, and they decided that they wanted to pull from their display the Hierarch Boyle. That's their one-off.
That was displayed at Gen Con in, I think, 2007?
Was it 7 or 8? It was
either 7 or 8. I was there that Gen Con where they did the Invasion of Seoul and they did the final battle. They had a mock-up of the final battle where Harbinger and is instructing Striker and they're fighting against Voyle, and he's fighting one-on-one against Voyle.
Well, if we want to break it down officially, so Harbinger was off to the side observing with Menoth, and then she gave Providence, which is her sword, to Striker to strike down Voyle because nothing else could get through his guard.
Yeah.
And he was getting ready to basically ascend to godhood. He was going to be another heretic, but no one knew about the heretic at that point in time. So this is my project. This is sorry, that's long, but this is kind of like my love letter to Menoth, that I'm doing these 2 giant shrines. And even though they're not great pieces on the table, I'm going to bring them to Nova, and I'm going to use them in my lists.
They look good. I mean, they look epic when you put them. I love the pictures of them.
Oh, I appreciate that. Yeah,
I haven't had the pleasure to play against it yet. But, I don't mind that its rules are bad. I'm okay. That works for me.
I know what they do, and I kill them as fast as I possibly can. That's my only tip. The last 2 times that me and Alec have played, I've killed it on like turn 1 or turn 2.
Yeah, so everybody targets it, and I'm like, it's actually not that good of a piece. It's kind of a niche thing on what it can do.
With that spam
distraction Carnifex, right?
With that spam interdiction army that you're playing right now, it brings guys back. And so that's the number one thing I don't want to have happen.
Oh, no. I definitely. Well, that is the niche. It brings people back, so I can continue to throw people at you.
Exactly.
That is, but it's for its points. That's kind of not great. Like I know it has a gun, but the gun doesn't do. Yeah, it's. Yeah. I feel like like I have notes on if SFG wants to reach out to me, I can give you notes on what I think it should do. And to make it better. But I also know you guys sold, or Privateer sold maybe, less than like 250 of them. And I don't think they would probably sell more, though I'm sure whoever was the creator of it possibly has a 3D rendering of it that they could possibly print if someone wanted to. Just saying that like for the specific shrine, I'm sure there's a render out there somewhere
with even better detail than those on the final Privateer model, if I remember correctly.
Just a guess. That is just a guess from me. And I would, in fact, even even give SFG the bottom, so the S tails for that, so they could even do that too. So make every single one of them big, because I'd love to see more of them on the table, especially if they get a little bit of a rules bump. I'm going to bring them with their bad, but that was actually. So go ahead, Joe. Tell us about what you're painting and why you're painting it.
Yeah. So maybe Jay, you want to go next? And then
no,
transition.
You're up, man. Well, I've been painting for you, so go.
Yeah, I have too. So we're getting ready for our big narrative event here. Mm-hmm. So I've been painting terrain mostly. So Alec 3D printed a bunch of buildings for us, and so he painted me an enormous windmill. It's hilarious. It's bigger than his shrine. Like when you put it next to like a bronze back, the bronze back's it's like 4 or 5 times taller than the bronze back.
It looks tiny. It looks like a small base model next to the windmill.
It really does. It's awesome. Terrain's been fun. It's a nice breath of fresh air. I don't feel like as compelled to go as hard. I get to try like cool techniques that I don't usually get to do. It's a lot of dry brushing. It looks great because it's it's supposed to be all natural and like textures and stuff. So I've had a lot of fun painting the windmill. I found some Cadoran like propaganda posters. I Googled them.
Yep.
And I put some of those on the side of it, so that's sick. If I get time, I'm gonna, put a little motor in so you can run the windmill blade by itself. Alec challenged me to do that. We'll see if I get around to it.
So I'm a bad influence. I try to challenge all of my local players to do something different. And they're like, oh, I can't do that. I'm like, well, yes, you can. Now go do it. And so I don't know how to put it. I'm an enabler. I'm like, well, you should learn this new thing. Now let's go. Dedicate.
Yep.
I'm a pusher. That's what I am. I'm a pusher.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So been working on that, which is fun. Just started on an ancient cairn. Right? Is it an ancient cairn? It's a soul cairn. That's what it is.
Soul cairn, yeah.
And I'm really, really stoked about that. I am a sucker, and I saw the Ninjon thing about the color cube. Have you guys seen this?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I have.
So I asked for a color cube for Father's Day, so I got a color cube.
Ooh,
and
jealous.
I'm color cubing both my PowerPoints at work and my my soul cairn. So that's been a lot of fun. I chose a nice magenta, like earth tones and magenta kind of scheme. So I'm excited to finish that. It's still in its baby stages, right? I'd share a picture.
Have you found the color cube helpful for you? Do you struggle with color schemes and stuff like that normally?
Yeah, I think so. I also struggle with laziness. So, I mean, I'm like every other painter, right? Like, there's like 5 colors I know how to paint, and one of them's purple because all of my scoring is purple, right? And so I default really hard to those colors, and so this has been good for pushing me out of my comfort zone. I'm using the color is ghost white, so it's white with some turquoise in it, and it gives it just a little bit of a tint, and I think it's going to look really dope. I haven't painted too much magenta. If they don't know. Oh, okay. So this is like it looks like a big Rubik's cube, and it has a bunch of like colored squares on the side. But inside of it is the important thing, and there are a bunch of cards, and on each card it's a set of 5 colors that make a palette together.
Yep.
And it gives you their number, it gives you their hex, so you can look up like the color composition online. That's helpful for like knowing how to blend them. So that's nice. And then it gives you different tones of those colors. Like I've been mixing the paint in my like pot, and then I'll like take a little paint out and I'll put it on the card to see if it's the right color. And then that tells me, oh, it's a little bit dark, it's a little bit not dark. Of course I don't have to stick to it, but I've kind of been doing it just for the fun of it, right? And then on the back it has a picture of like don't know, it's often like a piece of food or something, a nice scene that uses all of those colors in conjunction, so you can kind of get a sense for how they go together.
Do you know if you got a Series 1 or a Series 2?
I have a Series 1.
Okay.
And I'm happy to share. I mean, it's got like 300 cards inside. I'm happy to share cards with the group if y'all are interested in giving it a go.
Yeah. It's a
I didn't realize it was a Series 2.
Yeah. There's the person that created it is a YouTuber, and she has a channel, and I can give you guys the link to that. And she talks about the development of them and things on her channel. And there's a Series 1 that she put out a while ago, and then she created the Series 2 and used the funding of Series 2 to help her reprint Series 1 so that they both sort of came out together and that's when she sent a Series 2 to Ninjon, which is what he was using, that he used on his video. I think it's really cool. I think that it's very helpful for people that are looking for that, and it's sort of for those that are listening. I'll if you're watching this on YouTube, I'll splash a couple pictures up, and I'll put a link to these cubes so you can find them. If you're on Facebook and you're in paint groups, Facebook has been using them as ads, at least for me, for the last couple of months. They sort of give people a base color, a complementary color, and then a couple of tertiary colors of that to sort of create a paint scheme that you can use on your models, or when painting terrain, or as a way to base your models before you start adding additional colors, things like that. Ninjon's been using them as like ways to paint specific toning of pieces of models within his given collection, and how to create differences with models by taking one color that's on a couple of cards and painting models that they're using the same base color, but then going in different directions with different types of models, things like that. Exploring those kind of things, which I think is pretty cool. Me personally,
and it forces a little bit of creativity. Like, okay, I have these 5 colors. What do I do with it?
Yep.
Which is fun. And as I move like less from becoming someone who is like an army painter to someone who's just like interested in painting, it's kind of a nice way to transition to thinking about, okay, every model might have its own scheme.
Yeah, and if people aren't interested in going out and get these cubes or looking at these cubes, there are other ways to do this kind of stuff. So I actually use an app called Paint Rack. I use it for two reasons. One, I use it to sort of track my paint, what I have on stock, what I have on hand. So when I'm in a store, if I'm not sure if I need to replace the color or get a backup color of a specific P3 color, I keep it in my wish list within Paint Rack, and so I can pick it up and say like, oh, I need these colors, and oh, they have them here, so I'll grab them. But they also have a function in Paint Rack. There's a couple other apps that do this too, where you can pick a color from a paint line, and then see the complementary colors, tertiary colors. I think it goes out to like 5 of colors that would naturally go with that line. So, like for example, when I was coming up with a paint scheme for my Warcaster Aeternus Continuum army, I had painted a bunch of armies, and I had. At that point, I had painted a red army and a green army and a Khador and Crix and turquoise Crucible Guard, and I hadn't ever painted anything in using royal blue, because when I painted Signar, I did the sort of black-gray army, and so I'd never really used the blue as a base color, and so I went into Paint Rack, picked the blue that I wanted to use, and then saw that, well, it works well with red-brown and with green, with sort of like light green. And knowing a little bit about
color theory,
yeah, you can diffuse the color one way or light the color one way, and then also sort of push the colors on the color wheel. So like if I was going to use a really dark blue, I could use a red-brown and then a bright green, or I could do a lighter blue, use a sort of a more orange and a darker green, or I could use a teal and an orange or something like that. So there's other tools and apps out there, or even you just using a color wheel to do that. But these cards, the nice thing about them is it gives you a set, hey, I want to use this color. So I look through the things and I find all the ones that relate to that color, and then I see different ways to apply them without having to do all that secondary work, especially if you don't have the experience or knowledge to do that.
Yeah, it's been nice, and I know just enough color theory to be afraid of it. So this is like kind of a perfect spot for me.
Yeah, I think color theory is great. I think more people should dive deep into it because it really helps you when picking colors, knowing when you should use a muted tone compared to a bright tone, or or go towards a more pastel color, or it helps a lot of that in that decision making, and it also helps you a lot with mixing paint, which I know a lot of people don't do.
Yeah,
we should get into two-brush blending.
Yeah, I'm excited to mix my own colors.
Yeah,
that's the thing I want to learn this year.
Poor Jay had to edit out a whole bunch of the clicking sounds of me having a brush in my mouth, and then taking it out to blend, and then it was like, so I'm not doing any two-brush blending today. This is all just straight brush.
Yeah, that's something I'm sure we'll talk about in another episode at some point. So, why, Joe, are we painting all this terrain? Because I've also been working on a bunch of terrain. And we actually had a terrain day at your house recently. What was that for?
Okay, so we got an idea that we wanted to run a big narrative event as a community. Mm-hmm. And so, kind of casting around for ideas, we decided we'd run our own version of the Siege of Scarswall event that Privateer Press ran at Adepticon. Mm-hmm. It looked like pretty fun. I'm a big fan of like mega battles, mm-hmm. That's something I've loved in 40K, but never really done in Privateer Press in Warmachine. Mm-hmm. So,
you never got into Unbound?
No, I never. Well, played a horrible game of like. This is in Mark 2 points. It was like 300 versus 300 points, and we played like 2 turns of it, and it was terrible. I don't know. It was just too complicated. This is more going to be like. That was only 2 people playing, and This is going to be more like, a big 12-foot by 4-foot table. We're going to have a huge 12-foot wall on one side of it that Jason's been painting and printing, and we've been helping to paint it and get it ready mm-hmm. too. And all of our like awesome terrain that we've been making. And it's going to be, probably 4 or 5 people on one side, each having a 75-point army trying to fend the wall. And then an equal or maybe slightly larger number of attackers on the other side. Each, the narrative here is that each trying to assault the wall and break a hole in it to get through it. Mm-hmm. The narrative story here is that the Orgoth has established like a front. They've established kind of like a forward position in Ord, if I'm correct. And so they've got like a beachhead, so they've started mm-hmm. establishing their presence in the Iron Kingdom, but if they want to go deeper into the Iron Kingdoms, particularly into Signar, I think, they have to get past the Marcus Wall, which is this ancient fortification that's in Ord, originally set up, I think, to protect Ord from the Khadorans, though don't quote me on that. I'm feeling slightly, I'll do my research again. But it's quite old, but it's this massive fortification. Think like the Maginot Line from World War II or something like mm-hmm. that. And so the Orgoth have brought all of their colossals, the Garlghasts, across the sea, and they've fitted them out with siege weapons, and they brought them for the specific purpose of blowing holes in this wall and continuing and sort of, which has stymied their invasion of the Iron Kingdoms. And so we're going to reenact that battle.
Yeah, and we are gonna have some Garlghasts and some Orgoths in there. We have at least 3 Orgoth players are gonna have stuff, and if more people outside the community come in, there'll be.
I think it could even be 4.
I think we have 4. We have 4. I think in total in the community, but there are only 3 of them have Garlghasts. So we'll have at least 3 Garlghasts on the table, and then people will also be able to bring that are playing on the attackers will be able to come in, and they need to bring a colossal of some type with them. Yeah, and we'll have ones to use and things like that if you don't have one.
If SFG wants to send us a couple, we will definitely use theirs and put them on the table as well. Just gonna throw that out there. We would never turn down if you guys want to see more stuff. So just putting that out there.
Yeah.
I'll paint the hell out of it. There's no doubt.
Yeah. If you get it to me at least a week out,
I'd enjoy doing that.
If you get it to me at least a week out, I probably have the time to do it.
But I mean, we're gonna have a couple already.
Yep.
And so that's gonna be awesome. You know, the fluff behind the Garlghasts is interesting. My understanding is that when they're all from like an island that's off of where the Orgoth are from.
Yep.
And so like to get these things here, they actually like had to swim. They like captured them and chained them to the boats.
That's awesome.
I could be wrong about that, but like that's my impression, is that they're like these poor beasts got like, you know, they've been enslaved, chained to the boats, dragged across the ocean, and then outfitted with weapons of war just for this purpose. So I'm stoked to see that on the table. And so it's going to be this big fight. We'll have side scenario tables that are kind of like supporting the main effort, depending on how many people we get. And we've got this awesome 12-foot wall, and we've got rules for like the Garlghasts moving forward and blowing holes in it. You know, the victory condition is they have to make holes in the wall, and then they have to actually get Garlghasts through the holes. So this isn't going to be like an attrition thing. It's not like a traditional scenario. It's really like, you know, it's almost like football, right? Blow a hole in the line and you get somebody through it. So
now, when is that happening?
So it's happening on the 20th. So that is in a little over 20th of July. So almost 3 weeks now.
Yep.
So I think I've put together a rules packet for it. I've written some fluff for it. I think our wall is in like usable shape. I think we're still like improving it, but I think we could absolutely put it on the table and play today, which is awesome. A lot of hard work went into that. And
there's I think 3 of us, me, you, and Jason are all have 4 feet of it and are refining it. And then I have the rubble pieces for after the wall's been destroyed that I'm currently working on right now.
Yeah. And you painted up a Soul Cairn, Jay?
I did. Soul Cairn and 3 ancient monoliths, and I have 6 more waiting at the shop for me to pick up here in the next couple days and get painted up as well.
And I think the community's painted like, I don't know, probably in total it'll be like 8 buildings that Alec supplied us. We're going to have way more terrain than we need for our 12-foot table and our side tables. That's going to be awesome.
Well, hopefully tomorrow I'm going to start printing the towers we need for the cannons. And I'm going to use the cannons that Privateer did with the kit bash system years ago. So I kit bashed 3 cannons. So those are the cannons we're going to use. So I'm going to have towers for them. And then after that, I'm going to start printing some of the trees as well. So we're going to have damaged trees and regular trees and other stuff. We already have hills and stuff. So it's going to be pretty awesome when you see these tables. I think, Joe, you could talk about how we set up and took photos. And I think those photos turned out amazing.
It's one of those things where like, so we set up like 4 feet of the wall and a bunch of the terrain, and we took a bunch of my Scorn and Alex Menoth and Jay's Kador. I think that was it, right? Just those 3 armies. And we staged kind of a mock invasion of the wall, and it looked great. Mm-hmm. It looked really good. It was one of those things where like I didn't know that there was so much. This is gonna sound silly, like art that goes into taking those photos, but Jay knew a lot about it, and like, you know, taking pictures from cool perspectives, like framing the shots in the right way. I think they turned out great. I sent, we published some of them on the Facebook groups, and they made me really excited.
Yeah, I've got another wave of them to finish editing and send to you that I got with Mike's Orgoth painted models.
Oh, did you?
Last weekend.
Actual Orgoth. It's going to be sick. Yeah, how's his stuff coming? I know he was like...
he painted a bunch of it, and the stuff he painted looks really good, and then he got distracted by another project for another game, and he hasn't gone back to finishing them. Hopefully we can kick him in the butt and get him to finish his Garlghast. I think he'll be able to.
I just hope he plays. I mean, I think that'd be the best.
Oh no, I think he definitely is planning to play.
I'd like to mention
how much this is like promoting people painting, though. I think that's been smart.
Yeah. So as much as I love seeing people paint, I love seeing people play. So if you guys want to come out, you can come out with bare plastic, and we would love to see you guys just show up and play. Because don't remember, we love painted, but just getting people out there throwing dice is the best way.
And if the area, and even if you're not, and you want to travel down here and you don't think you can bring an army with you, we have armies, and so just
let me know.
let us know ahead of time, and what kind of army you want to play with, and we can see if we can put something together for you. Because we'd love to just get people in and get people playing. We actually had one of our locals who hasn't played with us regularly. He's played sort of off and on for the last year or so. He's been busy with real life stuff going on, and he came to the painting day we had at Joe's. He actually said that he probably wasn't going to play because he just didn't feel like he had played enough recently that he would be able to have a good showing and actually sort of play well and be knowledgeable and be able to play. And I was like, hey man, that isn't what this game is about. This game is about getting there and playing the game and having fun with your friends and throwing dice. And I think I convinced him to come out. So,
that'd be awesome.
Heck, if this is your first game of Mark IV, we'd love to have you. If this is your 500th game of Mark IV, we'd definitely love to have you. Come on out, try it out. I think we have some guys coming down from Richmond that have said that they're probably going to make it out.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Great. I need to start getting sign-ups. It's about that time, isn't it?
Well, yeah. We should definitely need to put another ping out there and be like, hey, if you're planning to make it out, let us know so that we can plan for the number of players that we're expecting.
I don't know. It's like there's no better way to learn, right? Like you'll be on a team with a bunch of people who can play with you. I've set it up so this game has like a comeback mechanic kind of.
Mm-hmm.
So when your army gets sufficiently destroyed, all you do is you take it off the table, and then your next turn you redeploy. It is gold. So it's designed to keep people playing in the game. If you get attritioned really hard, that's fine. You just come right back.
Yep.
Which I think will be fun. I think
agree.
It'll give it a really dynamic feel. I think it'll make it feel really thematic. Like everybody's rushing to defend this wall. No idea about the balance, but that's just not really a concern.
Yeah.
We'll see. You might if you run it again, we might make tweaks based on how we feel. But
yeah, and we'll definitely, with all the work we've done and all the preparation, you'll definitely see this scenario again in other places, I'm sure. From us.
I mean, we need to just defend the wall. The lawgiver says so.
Yeah.
It's been a good source of energy for me.
Yeah.
So I'm glad you guys pushed us to do this. I mean, I think that's been really positive.
Man, I think it was on you that you really the one that sort of reached out to Privateer and was like, hey man, can we get the rules? And they were like, yeah, here you go.
Yeah, well,
I probably wouldn't have even
pusher is Alec, right? Who's just like, oh, guess what? Jason and I are printing everything. There's an event,
No pressure.
Well,
yeah, it was definitely like that. It was like, too late to back out now, Joe. Choose a date because you got walls. It was pretty good.
The funny thing about that is, you and I had sort of talked about it a little bit. And you were like, hey, I got the rules, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, cool. We'll, come together and build the walls and paint them as a group and have train days and stuff and all. And then just all of a sudden over here on this other corner, it's like, oh, yeah, we've already started printing the walls and we're going to have the 12 feet done here by June 1st. And, we're going to get it all printed. And then Jason was like, well, I've already started painting it.
Yeah,
it's
incredible, man. I'm so grateful for that. It's just been unreal.
We have a weird motivation. You give me an objective, I will accomplish it.
It has really reminded me of that army thing where you have two really good NCOs and you just accidentally say something and then it happens and you're like, do you know what I mean, Alec?
I know 100%
really
what you mean.
Feels like that, yeah. Which is a good thing. You just never know when you're in that position where things are going to turn out that way. But it's been very positive.
I appreciate that. Yeah, definitely. That's the army broke me, and it's like, or I shouldn't say broke, programmed me.
Programmed you.
That I'm like, oh, hey, I need to do this. Well, Commander gave his intent. Let's make it happen. And then come back and be like, ta-da!
Yeah. So now that we've covered the wall, we've covered what we've been working on. We covered our thoughts about competitive play and narrative play, and that big long discussion we had at the beginning about how to get people in and the different approaches and things. I think we're getting close to sort of wrapping up the episode. I think we have one more thing we wanted to talk about before closing out, and that was models. Are there any models from Mark 1, Mark 2, Mark 3, Mark 4 that really stick with you guys, that just how they were sculpted, the way they look, the posability of them when you put them together? Is there any models out there that you guys really think are just fantastic from the game?
Ooh, go ahead, Joe.
So I was racking my brain about this. I gotta say, Deathjack.
Okay.
Like, ooh, that's a good one.
That was one of the first models I got for this game, and I love how like big and menacing it is. I love all of the steam pipes coming off and vents coming off of it. Like, man, it was terrible to put together, but it was a pleasure to paint. Like,
so we're talking about the Mark 1, Mark 2 Deathjack, and not the Mark 3 Deathjack.
There's a Mark 3 Deathjack.
Yeah, the Behemoth, Deathjack. Basically, the 3 of the 4 of the first 4 character jacks got a Mark 3 version, updated version. So Behemoth,
seriously,
Deathjack, and Avatar all got an updated version in Mark 3.
Yep.
Okay. No, I'm thinking Mark 1 Deathjack with like covered in spikes,
all metal,
enormous hands, all metal, like that like neck that's like way down low.
Oh yeah, I know that one.
The chest cage that you either glue open with souls coming out of it or glue closed. Everyone they tried to do the open and the souls kept breaking off, so they'd have to break it apart and glue it closed later. Yeah, I remember that Deathjack. I think I still have one sitting over on my shelf.
I have one on my shelf somewhere. Hold on.
Yeah. No.
All right, so Jay, what was one of your favorite looking pieces? New, old?
So I'm actually going to go the same route and talk about a character jack. I think that Behemoth in Mark 1 was a big model for me. And don't get me wrong, it wasn't a great model. The hokey pokey foot up in the air was kind of goofy, but it was a fantastic model. And buying that and Karchev 1 at Gen Con in 2005, going back to my hotel room and putting them together, having them not stick, and basically slathering them with super glue and running them under the water of the sink so that the super glue would harden, so that I could go play with them at the con. It was like one of the best experiences ever, and I love those models for that.
That is a dirty old trick, but I love it.
Well,
it works though.
Yeah, super glue was created as sealant for bandages in World War II, and blood was the thing that would cause it to seal, and so water works just fine.
Oh, I learned something today.
Yeah,
you didn't already know that?
No, I had no idea. I mean, I've known that people use super glue to close wounds. I didn't know that was why it was invented.
Yeah, it was created for field dressings, as the way to bond a field dressing and stop the bleeding in World War II. But I think, and don't get me wrong, the Mark 1 Behemoth is great, but I actually think that the Mark 3 Behemoth is probably one of my favorite models of all time. It is such a beautiful model. They remastered it so well. A lot of the places that were sort of weak and sort of goofy looking on the original Mark 1 model got fixed, and I still think it's probably one of the best models. And if they just re-released that model in 80mm base for Wintercorp, that would be the best thing ever.
Yeah, that's a chunky boy. I'm looking at it now. It looks really good.
Yep.
Really good.
You didn't want a Black Ivan? New Black Ivan?
So I like Black Ivan, and I actually had at one point a extreme Black Ivan done up. But as far as models go, because it was a build-on kit that built upon the upgrade kit to the plastic warjack, I think that all of the resin, especially the Mark III resin jacks, were just so much nicer. I think that Eye of Truth is one of the coolest Menoth models that ever came out.
It is. I actually have one. Wait, hold on.
No.
Keep talking. I'm going to pull it off.
Yeah. Eye of Truth, I think, is a fantastic model. Fiora's jack, forget what it's called off the top of my head. It has
Fire of Salvation.
Yeah, Fire of Salvation with the flamethrower and the big flaming mace, I think, is a really sweet model. That's actually a model I still have in my collection that I need to finish painting at some point. But yeah, I mean, but then again, I'm a Warjack guy, so I've always been drawn more to Warmachine than the Hordes in the past, even though I have played pretty much all the Hordes factions. I will admit that things like the original Metal Spriggan is another Khador Jack that I just absolutely love. But then there's also stuff like the original Diotral Mauler, the big Hulk with the fists.
It's like enormous.
Oh, it's so great. That model is so cool. Is there any Scorn models that you really think are fantastic, Joe?
Oh, well, man, it's so hard for me to separate.
I have truth for you.
Yep.
The feels, Oh, it's a great looking model.
mean, it's my poor paint job, but it's an amazing look. Just the detail on it.
That shield, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That shield.
That's the best part. Awesome. Okay, so yeah, I thought about scoring models. It's hard to just choose 5 or 10. But it's 2 of my favorites.
Okay.
I'm trying to get away from Moldor beasts because I really like the elephants, but I love all of the cataphracts, like the Fist of Halak. I don't know if you guys played against that in Mark II, but the army with like all the Incendiari and Arcuri and Xerxes leading them. I thought that like it's one of the OG all medium base armies.
Did you like the metal models or did you prefer the plastic models?
I think I only have metal. No, my Incendiari are plastic. So probably the plastic is easier, but I mean I love the feel of the metal models, right?
The flags on those metal models were a nightmare. I played Scorn and Mark 1 and they were that was awful. I totally bitsed back when there was a bit service. I totally bitsed back banners from other units and used them instead of those flags on mine.
I don't have any banners on any of my Scorn. I took them all off because I didn't want them to break. So I was just like, they're too fat. And then the other one, I really love Morgul too.
Okay.
Remember that guy?
Yeah,
he's
great.
Like balanced on one foot on top of a pillar. He's got a span. It's a super dynamic pose. He just looks like he's ready to get after it. I think those are like 2 of my favorites.
I mean, I can't get away. Me personally, for Scorn, I can't get away from the Beast. So I have to say the Bronzeback is my favorite.
Yeah, that's the one I was like intention. Yeah, I mean it's the best looking Beast. It's so beefy. It's so bulky. Like it weighs. It's like heavy. Like it's like perfect for like Yeah, it's incredible. It's a really good beast.
but then again, like it also has the biggest base overhang of like any model except for the Mammoth, which is basically its big daddy brother.
Yeah, enormous. Well, mine are all on rocks, so they're leaning back. They're like climbing
and
hill,
and
all their tusks
are up in the air.
They actually fit. Yes, they actually fit on their faces.
Yeah. Yeah, painting the Bronzeback is a great memory for me. I love the model. It's actually one of the first models I wet blended on the model back when I was learning how to wet blend. I wet blended the skin on the back and made it and took it from the sort of gray tone that you usually paint the skin to, and I actually went up to a sort of a bronze, sort of peachy, sun-dried, peeling flesh color on the back when I painted mine way back in the day.
Back in the day. You still have it?
No. I sold the armor a long time ago. Yeah, no, my Scorn were desert colored, so instead of doing them in the red and bronze, they were in desert tans and whites and silver trim.
So that's dope scheme.
All right. So I have. So I have 2. I'm gonna say. But I had to look through all my stuff. I have more than 2, but I was trying to look and trying to narrow it down. So probably one of my favorite from, back in the day. You can make a guess, but it's going to be her.
Really?
Yeah.
And so her, for those of you that are listening to the podcast.
Sorry, this is Harbinger.
Oh man, you should have just let him guess.
I should have.
Where's her flag?
I guess it was going to be Fiora.
So I actually have her flag is on a different piece because her flag would always fall off.
Yep.
But I loved the pose. I mean, obviously I modded mine slightly because there's the chains that move and stuff. But I loved the idea of how they did with the robe coming down, that it was like it really gave that feel of her just floating, with her feet in the air and all that.
That model is a nightmare to assemble, especially when you're trying to use the original chains.
All the good ones are, but I'm with Alec. This one is super iconic. Really.
Well, this one's been kick bashed a little bit. You can see on the camera that she has a few upgrades on her that I like. So that's probably that. Or I'm surprised none of you guys mentioned this, but some of the Cav models we got, especially in some of the Mark III. And so this is going to be a champion of the wall. Obviously, I did a different base on him just because. I had a huge amount of rec markers, but I thought even his dismounted was a really good dynamic feel and look to him. Like, oh yeah, hey, I'm going to stand here and do some crazy stuff.
Oh,
but I mean, I'm sorry, none of you mentioned the Death Archon. This boy. You didn't like him? Did you not like him because of the rules, or you didn't like the look of him?
I like him. I have two of them that are very nicely painted. I think he's cool. I think that he's just the model's a little too over the top.
I mean, if reading about how he came from nothing and just came into existence from all the death of the battles, I feel like he was supposed to be over the top.
That's the fluff,
I thought he was going to be bigger.
Of him. That's the fluff. Like, this is we're talking about the model here, man. Don't get me wrong. I think that Archon. I think
this guy came out.
I think he's awesome. I think the idea behind him is cool. I think that the fact that he's sort of like they sprout up in the middle of battles where there's lots of death and lots of destruction, or where a lot of people have been sacrificed for like Gators or Infernals or Orgoth. But I think the model's cool. I painted two of them. I enjoyed playing with them the little bit I did at the end of Mark III, but I'm actually kind of happy he's not in the game anymore. I think he was really busted.
Oh, he absolutely was. He was absolutely.
And by not in the game anymore, I mean he can still play with him in an unlimited, but he's not in the prime. None of the Archons made it into the prime format.
They did not. No, I thought the actual model itself was good. I honestly thought he was going to be on a 120 with how they wrote him, and then he came out on a 60, and I was kind of a little bit disappointed.
50.
So I'm sorry, 50. He came out on a 50, and I was kind of disappointed, but I understand they just didn't want it. But I think if he, like that model with how big he was, I think it would have been better with him on a larger base. I feel like where Jay said he was just too much. Mm-hmm. I feel like probably, yeah, that might have been too much. But I feel like the detail that they had in the model between the rib cage and stuff like that, it was like with some of the Infernals, the Soul Reaver, I blanked on his name. The one where he's eating the person. He's eating the soul out of the body. Here, hold on. Let me go grab it.
Soul Stalker.
All right. Soul Stalker, this one.
Yep.
So with him, how you can see, all right, here's the soul, it's going, here's the body and stuff. But then you look in deep, if people can see on camera, but there's the body of a Signarian Trencher right there. And I was like, man, the detail that they put in, that, you know, it's actually getting pulled out of the guy's face, and you have part of the guy's face there. I like the amount of detail that they did in some of these older models. And because heck, even if you're not even a great painter, just having a good model and then having a few things with you know, just some dry brushing or how you're doing it, like however you do it, you can make it look like you know how to paint.
All right. So
not that I know how to paint.
Well, you're good. You're good. So we've talked about the old legacy stuff. Is there any of the new models that just blow your mind?
I'll let Joe. Joe, you've bought some new stuff, haven't you?
I'm terrible at this. So I'll say I think they all look way better in person, which has been exciting for me. I mean, the Wyvern is like, it's pretty legit. Mm-hmm. That thing looks sick on the table. I really strong argument to get into Chimera, I think.
Here, he's talking about this piece.
Yeah, that thing. I would love to paint one of those. I think it'd be really fun.
Yeah, and
you want to paint one? I have an extra.
Yeah, we'll see. I'm usually not desperate for painting projects.
Hey, you said on stream for everyone to hear that you would love to paint one. Yeah. I happen to have.
You're not wrong.
Yeah.
An extra.
You have evidence. Love is fleeting.
Yeah, as we've discussed, I'm a Winter Court player. And so for me, the Bison is the bee's knees, the coolest model out and about. It's my army's 80mm base model, and I have two of them. I love them. I think they're great. Though I think my favorite model overall in the army, model-wise, is probably Volkova, who's the character solo, the scythe-bearing ex-Greylord character solo. I like her, and I like to put her in every army just because I love the model. And she's also good, which helps.
Yeah, always helps.
Oh, well, I was going to show that my favorite Mark IV here. And of course, it came right off the base because sometimes that happens. Mm-hmm. So it was a mini crate, but it's still, I love the look of it. I got to clean it up a little bit. because it's
what is it for those that can't see it?
Oh, this is Rasik from Chimera.
But the mini crate version, the
Ninja
Assassin version, Shadow Assassin version.
That's a great looking sword.
Oh, it is, and it also has the fact that he has the throwing daggers right here. Some of the spikes that are coming through. Yeah, it is a good looking model. The detail, even into his mask and stuff. Yeah, I think this is a really good looking model. Mm-hmm. It gives me hope that when we do get the Mark IV Menoth, that, oh boy, them dinosaurs with them feathers and scales and fire, it's going to look good. SFG, if you want me to paint them, you can just send them to me. My address is on file somewhere.
I'm really shocked that none of you guys mentioned Big Pig, who's been the
mine's not built yet.
End all be all model for a lot of people.
I have mine. Sick.
He's really good. Yeah.
Well, so he's good unless you have to go against him, and he's rolling 5s and 6s for his shooting. This is what they're talking about here. I have to build mine. I know everyone's thinking, wait, Alec, you have Menoth. I have everything. I have a problem.
Yeah, I started painting mine last week before I got my additional stuff from the
Are you going to do the spinning barrels?
Huh?
Are you going to do the spinning barrels like I am?
No way in heck, no. I'm not that crazy.
Sure you are. Come on, be like me.
No. I've already started painting him. I'm not going to chop the model up and risk destroying it.
Fair enough.
All right, guys. So I think we've talked about models that we've loved, and this is something that we're going to do more often in future episodes. We're going to talk about memories and the reasons we play the game and the stuff that really bring us in and create the full picture of not just playing the game or painting the models, the pieces, the fluff, the stuff that really grabs us and sucks us into this world that Alec and I and Joe have really enjoyed for many, many years. Is there anything else either one of you guys want to mention or talk about before we head out of here?
Joe, go ahead. Go first.
Yeah,
we're going to put you on the spot again.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's been a lot of fun. Looking forward to seeing everybody at the Siege of Scarswall on July 20th.
And where can they find you if they want to talk to you?
Facebook is probably good, or I'm in the Atlanteans Discord.
All right. Thank you so much, Joe, for coming on and joining us. It was great having you on and being able to talk with you. Thanks for making the time to join us.
No problem.
I'd also like to announce that for those of you that were waiting for us to become a full podcast, you can now listen to the Atlanteans on any of the major podcast networks or YouTube. We'll probably start putting episodes out maybe every 2 weeks or so. The main podcast networks you can listen to on are Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Prime Kindle, Samsung. But find us on much more obscure, and we're in about 10 of the main major networks. If you have a problem finding us, please let us know. We'd love to get on more networks and so that more people can listen to us. So just let us know what network you use and hopefully what feed they subscribe to. And we'll see about trying to get our show onto that. Thank you.
If you guys have any questions for us or you have any suggestions, please reach out to us on Facebook, on YouTube. I think you guys probably saw that we do read your comments and we'll give them thumbs up.
Yep, and respond in as timely a fashion as we can. Thank you very much for listening to the show. This has been Jay.
And Alec.
And
Joe struggles with his microphone.
Yeah. Thank you for listening to the show, and we'll see you again in episode 3. Have a good
night.
Bye,
guys.